Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Friday, November 14th, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The high in Riverside today is 61.9 degrees, with a low of 57.8 degrees, so expect a cool, comfortable day perfect for getting out and about without overheating. Coming up on the show, we'll break down the reasons behind Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket finally nailing that booster landing after years of development, and examine California's pushback against AT&T's move to phase out traditional landline phone services in favor of modern alternatives. We'll also cover other key developments from around the world that are making headlines this morning, including tech innovations and local impacts. All this and more ahead on Alex's News. Stay tuned. Good morning, everyone. We start today's top stories with an out-of-this-world achievement in spaceflight. Yesterday, Blue Origin made history with the successful launch of its New Glenn rocket, deploying NASA's twin Escapade spacecraft bound for Mars. Joining me now to unpack all the details is our science and technology reporter, Ethan. Ethan, take us through what happened.
Absolutely, Grace. On November 13th, 2025, Blue Origin launched the massive New Glenn rocket from Space Launch Complex 36 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. This 321-foot-tall heavy-lift vehicle, powered by 7 methane-burning BE-4 engines that generate 3.8 million pounds of thrust, carried NASA's twin Escapade spacecraft, individually named Blue and Gold. These orbiters are headed to study Mars' upper atmosphere and how it interacts with solar wind. According to extensive reporting from NBC News, this was only the second flight for New Glenn and marked Blue Origin's first successful recovery of a first-stage booster, a huge step in making rocketry reusable and cost-effective.
That sounds like a booster shot for the company. Tell me more about the mission itself. What exactly will these Escapade spacecraft do once they get to Mars?
Great pun, Grace. The Escapade mission, short for Escape and Plasma Acceleration and Dynamics Explorers, is a low-cost NASA project budgeted under $80 million, or about $107.4 million by some estimates. Managed by the University of California, Berkeley Space Sciences Laboratory, and built by Rocket Lab, the twin identical orbiters will provide a stereo viewpoint, allowing simultaneous observations that a single spacecraft could not achieve. Their goals, as outlined by nasa.gov and eoportal.org, include uncovering processes that shape Mars' hybrid magnetosphere and ion flows, determining how solar wind transfers energy and momentum, studying energy and matter dynamics in the collisional atmosphere, charting real-time responses to solar storms and space weather, investigating particle energization and atmospheric escape, and mapping the ionosphere to help with radiation shielding for future astronauts. This addresses why Mars lost its ancient wet and warm atmosphere, turning dry and dusty over billions of years due to its degrading magnetic field. Each orbiter carries 3 instruments: the Escapade Magnetometer, or EMAG, which measures DC magnetic fields up to 1,000 nanoteslas for topology, the Electrostatic Analyzer, or EESA, that detects superthermal ions from 2 electron volts to 20 kiloelectron volts, and electrons from 3 electron volts to 10 kiloelectron volts for plasma distributions, and the Langmuir probe, or ELP, which gauges plasma density from 20 to 30,000 particles per cc, and solar.
Fascinating. And the timeline? When do we expect them to arrive at Mars?
The journey is not direct. After deployment, about 20 minutes post-liftoff, as detailed in NBC News coverage, sourced from the Associated Press and published on November 13th at 4:56 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the orbiters will spend about 11 months to a year in a loiter orbit near Earth, drifting up to 1 million miles away, possibly near Lagrange Point 2. That is a stable point in space where gravitational forces balance. They will use Earth gravity for a slingshot assist in fall or November of 2026, arriving at Mars in September of 2027. That is about 1,700 days from now, Grace, missing the ideal 2024 window due to New Glenn development delays, as explained by lead scientist Rob Lillis in interviews cited by NBC News and Berkeley.edu. This flexible path could let future missions queue up in space and launch anytime.
The launch itself had some drama with delays. What caused that? And how did the recovery go?
Yes, liftoff happened in the afternoon after a 4-day delay from inclement local weather and intense solar storms that even produced auroras visible as far south as Florida. Ironically, those solar phenomena spotlighted the space weather dynamics Escapade aims to investigate. Yahoo News, publishing the Associated Press story at 8:55 p.m. Universal Coordinated Time that day, highlighted the ecstatic reaction from Blue Origin staff, with Jeff Bezos watching from launch control as employees cheered and chanted, quote, "Next stop, Moon," end quote. A historic highlight was the booster recovery 9 minutes after liftoff. The first stage booster, designated GS1SN002-1 and nicknamed Never Tell Me the Odds, landed upright on their purpose-built offshore platform, Landing Platform Vessel 1, nicknamed Jacqueline after Bezos' mother. This barge, IMO 9998676, and built in Romania in 2024, was stationed about 375 to 620 miles downrange in the Atlantic Ocean, within a recovery zone around latitude 28 degrees 1 minute 19 seconds north, longitude 74 degrees 12 minutes 19 seconds west, per prior FAA and U.S. Coast Guard filings. The Guardian, published November 13th at 18:54 Eastern Standard Time and updated November 14th at 05:47 Eastern Standard Time, called it a bullseye landing, underscoring its role in slashing costs, much like SpaceX techniques.
Blue Origin has been building to this. How does this compare to their previous efforts?
New Glenn, named after astronaut John Glenn, who was the first American to orbit Earth in 1962, is 5 times larger than Blue Origin's suborbital New Shepard rocket, which takes paying tourists to the edge of space from West Texas. Its inaugural test flight on January 16, 2025, deployed a prototype Blue Ring spacecraft to orbit but failed booster recovery. The stage was lost on descent due to issues like ice formation in a purge line on an auxiliary power unit, as investigated by the FAA. A prior scrub on January 13th came from hydraulic system problems, leading to a mishap probe and holds. Blue Origin applied 7 corrective actions, including better propellant management and engine performance, paving the way for this success. As noted in The Guardian and Yahoo News, CEO Dave Limp said nailing such a large booster landing on the second try is rare. Post-flight, the booster went to Port Canaveral for inspections. Full results are pending, but they plan to refurbish it for up to 25 reuses, targeting the third flight. This is Blue Origin's first successful recovery, a critical milestone in reusable rocketry, reported extensively by NBC News, The Guardian, and Yahoo News via Associated Press.
And the broader picture, how does this fit into bigger space plans?
It bolsters Blue Origin role in NASA Artemis program, where they hold a contract for the third crewed lunar landing with their Blue Moon lander. SpaceX taller Starship, nearly 100 feet more, won the first 2. But in October 2025, NASA Acting Administrator Sean Duffy reopened bidding for the first due to Starship test delays in Texas. Both companies submitted accelerated plans. NASA SLS rocket enables Artemis 2, a crewed lunar flyby, in early 2026, with Artemis 3 targeting a landing by decade end to beat China lunar ambitions. Only 12 Apollo astronauts walked the moon over 50 years ago, so this revives that era. Blue Origin eyes New Glenn for lunar transport and supplies. Looking ahead, their 2026 manifest is packed Blue Moon Pathfinder Mission 1 demo, with NASA SCALPSS stereo cameras under CLPS program, awarded July 2024, net January 2026, possibly reusing the Escapade booster. Mid-2026 brings Amazon Project Kuiper launching 49 internet satellites. More bookings include multi-year NASA deals, AST SpaceMobile, telecom providers, and U.S. Space Force NSSL certification. By 2027, New Glenn supports Blue Moon Pathfinder 2 with NASA Viper lunar rover. As NPR and Space.com analyses suggest, this reusability milestone cuts costs, heats up SpaceX rivalry, and speeds deep space goals amid FAA waivers and safety actions. On this November 14, 2025, it shows Blue Origin maturing, with Escapade data set to transform Mars insights. This is NASA's first Mars launch in over 5 years, per SpaceDaily.com and Universe magazine.
What a stellar story, Ethan, full of cosmic proportions. Thanks for breaking it down so thoroughly.
My pleasure, Grace.
Good morning, everyone. We're turning now to a crucial story that's sparking a real wire-to-wire battle in California over the future of traditional landline phones. These old-school copper lines are proving to be the unsung heroes in emergencies, but AT&T is pushing hard to hang them up for good. Joining me in the studio to unpack this is our technology and policy reporter, Chloe. Chloe, thanks for being here. What's the big picture on why landlines are still such a lifeline for so many Californians?
Thanks, Grace. Absolutely, landlines, or what experts call plain old telephone service, often shortened to POTS, are like the reliable old friends who show up when the party's over. On this date, November 14, 2025, a fierce debate is heating up because these copper lines serve as a critical backup for hundreds of thousands of people, especially in rural spots, low-income neighborhoods, elderly homes, and tribal communities. When wildfires rage, or those massive atmospheric rivers dump rain, wireless signals can fizzle out, and internet-based calls just crash. According to reporting from CalMatters, these landlines keep working because they draw power from the phone company's central office, not your home electricity, so they stay on even during long blackouts.
That makes sense, especially in a state prone to disasters. But AT&T, the big player here, wants to retire these lines. Chloe, can you break down their argument and what they've been doing to make it happen?
Sure thing, Grace. AT&T sees these copper networks as dinosaurs from the last century, costing a fortune to keep alive when almost everyone has a smartphone these days. They estimate only about 5% of their California customers, roughly 500,000 folks, still depend on them, as detailed in their filings with the California Public Utilities Commission, or CPUC. Instead, they're championing wireless services, voice over internet protocol, which is VoIP, and speedy fiber connections that bundle voice and internet. AT&T executives, quoted in Politico Pro and Inside Towers, say these modern options bring bells and whistles like pinpoint location tracking for 911 calls and even text to 911, features that plain copper just can't match. Nationally, AT&T plans to shut down half their copper setups by the end of this year, 2025, and almost all by 2029. But in California, they're stuck as the carrier of last resort, or COLR, meaning they have to provide basic phone service to anyone who asks, no matter where. So they've switched tactics to heavy lobbying, shelling out over $2 million just from April to June this year, per disclosures covered by CalMatters and the San Francisco Chronicle.
Lobbying sounds like they're pulling strings behind the scenes. Tell me more about that coalition you mentioned in some reports. Is there any shady business there?
Spot on, Grace. It's like a puppet show where the telecom giant holds the strings. A CalMatters investigation from yesterday, November 13th, by reporters Yue Stella Yu and Melina Carollo, blew the lid off AT&T's support for what they called a grassroots coalition pushing for landline retirement. Turns out, some groups in that coalition had hidden financial links to AT&T, yet they showed up at hearings pretending to be everyday folks. This came right after the CPUC shot down AT&T's bid to ditch their COLR status back in June of last year, 2024, saying there wasn't enough proof that alternatives would work for everyone. That story got picked up by Lookout Santa Cruz and the Merced Focus on November 13th, too, raising red flags about conflicts in the whole deregulation push.
Fascinating, and a bit concerning. Now, why are these landlines so vital during emergencies? I know from past wildfires how spotty cell service can be.
Exactly, Grace. They're the line of defense when everything else goes dark. Emergency responders and groups like the Utility Reform Network, or turn, have testified at CPUC meetings that landlines beat wireless and VoIP hands down in crises because those newer services rely on cell towers, routers, or internet lines that get wrecked by earthquakes, fires, or floods. Landlines automatically send your address to 911 operators, which is huge if you're panicked or hurt. In rural Northern California or the Central Valley, wireless dead zones are common due to the hilly terrain and thin infrastructure. The California Farm Bureau Federation, as noted in YOLO Healthy Aging and Benton.org reports from last year into this one, says farmers count on them for wildfire alerts and getting help fast. Plus, over 60% of Californians 75 and older primarily use landlines, per a 2025 AP News analysis, often because they can't afford or navigate smartphones easily.
Those demographics really hit home. Can you give some real-world examples from recent disasters where landlines saved the day?
For sure. Take the Southern California wildfires in 2024, as covered by SF Gate and the San Francisco Chronicle. When PG&E did those public safety power shutoffs, or PSPS, to prevent fires, power went out, killing cell service in many spots, but landlines let people dial 911 right away. Then, those atmospheric rivers in late 2024 and early this year flooded the Central Valley, knocking out fiber lines and swamping wireless networks. According to GovTech.com and iHeart.com, CPUC filings and FCC disaster information reporting system summaries show copper lines kept humming when others didn't. For folks with disabilities using special landline gear, it's even riskier without them. Turn warned in a November 2025 statement on their site that response times could jump up to 30% longer in underserved areas.
Scary stuff. On the legislative front, there's this Assembly Bill 470. What's the latest there, and why's it stalled?
AB 470 is AT&T's big political play, introduced early this year by Assemblymember Tina McKinnon. It would let them off the COLR hook in areas deemed well-served by wireless or VoIP if they promise to roll out more fiber to neglected spots. AT&T lobbyists, per Politico Pro, say it'd modernize things and connect millions more. It zipped through the Assembly on June 27, 2025, with a 58-2 vote, got tweaked in the Senate on July 17, and hit the Appropriations Committee suspense file on August 18, passing 7-0 there. But on August 29, it got held under submission in that committee, basically parking it for the 2025 session, as tracked by Legiscan.com and Cal Matters. Since it's a 2-year bill in the 2025 to 2026 cycle, it might pop up in 2026, but Turn says on their website it's stopped for now and won't budge until maybe 2027 without big changes. Groups like the Rural County Representatives of California, or RCRC, and California Professional Firefighters, detailed in rcrcnet.org and capradio.org, fought it over loose definitions of well-served areas, weak protections, and letting companies decide on their own without CPUC checks.
So politics is tying it up. What about the regulators? Is the CPUC doing anything to balance this?
They're in the thick of it, Grace. After rejecting AT&T's COLR plea as fatally flawed, per LAist and Times of San Diego, they kicked off rulemaking R.24-06-012 on June 20, 2024. This is all about updating COLR rules for today's tech, like including broadband in basic service and setting standards for relief in covered areas. As of today, no final decision yet from CPUC dockets on ca.gov. They've had stakeholder proposals by September 30th last year, replies by October 30th, revisions December 6th, and a scoping memo February 4th this year. Workshops on rural and tribal safeguards happened April 4th and 11th, universal service August 22nd, with public hearings April to May. They're pushing for VoIP and wireless to have 8 to 24 hours of battery backup to match landline staying power, plus migration plans and subsidies from the High Cost Fund for remote areas. AT&T's October 17th advice letter on tariff changes, U-1001-C, says they can retire copper if they keep COLR via other means. New rules demand 90% of outages fixed in 24 hours, with credits if not. A July 9th proposed decision draft lines up well-served maps by December 15, 2026, but things could drag to 2027.
Impressive oversight. Finally, how do recent disasters stack up the reliability of landlines versus these alternatives?
It's a mixed bag, but landlines often come out ahead for everyday folks. In the 2024 wildfires, AT&T's FirstNet for public safety hit over 99% uptime in Greater Los Angeles by January this year, using satellite-linked cell sites that fixed 91% of spots, per firstnet.com and Communications Daily. During Hurricane Milton in Florida last October, 98% of their cell sites held up for 911. But a nationwide wireless outage in February 2024 blocked over 25,000 calls to public safety answering points for 12 hours, as in FCC Federal Register notices. For VoIP, the FCC's location routing rule from January 2024, rolled out by November 13 that year, cut misrouted calls by 1.3 million yearly nationwide, with certifications by January 12 this year. In California, 92% of 2022 911 calls were wireless or VoIP, but Next Generation 911, or NG 911, is only in 23 of over 400 public safety answering points by May this year, per statescoop.com and jsitelephone.com. A 12-hour outage in Tuolumne County in 2024 blocked 911 entirely. CPUC filings note fiber floods in the Central Valley from 2024 atmospheric rivers, per WEC.org and PSPS killing VoIP. Copper shown in rural fires with PSPS, per ubinet.com and The Guardian, while towers overloaded. Fiber did self-heal in some 2025 floods, says Broadband Breakfast and Electric Energy Online, but TURN's comments highlight VoIP flops in tribal blackouts without central power. CPUC reports from June and August audited outages, and Disaster Information Reporting System since February 20th this year will give better data, though it's secret now. Bottom line, FirstNet rocks for pros, per IAFC.org and IAEM.org, but public rural calls lag, making copper a key fallback.
Wow, Chloe, you've really connected all the dots on this tangled issue. It seems like California is walking a tightrope between progress and protection. Thanks so much for that deep dive.
My pleasure, Grace. It's a call worth answering.
And our sources for this story include Cal Matters, Lookout Santa Cruz, The Merced Focus, LAist, Newsweek, The Associated Press, Politico Pro, Inside Towers, The San Francisco Chronicle, YOLO Healthy Aging, Benton.org, SFGate, GovTech.com, iHeart.com, Turn.org, Legiscan.com, RCRCnet.org, CapRadio.org, Times of San Diego, California.gov, FirstNet.com, Communications Daily, FCC Federal Register, Statescoop.com, JSITEL.com, Ubinet.com, The Guardian, Broadband Breakfast, Electric Energy Online, IAFC.org. Here are some other headlines. The UN Human Rights Council convened a special session to confront horrors in El Fasher, North Darfur, after the Rapid Support Forces seized the city. The World Health Organization says RSF fighters stormed the Saudi hospital, with more than 450 people killed. UN Rights Chief Volker Turk described reports of mass killings, ethnically targeted executions, gang rapes, and assaults on aid workers, atrocities he called foreseen and preventable. Delegates are debating a resolution to task an existing fact-finding mission with an urgent inquiry to identify perpetrators. With nearly 89,000 civilians fleeing El Fasher and a war since 2023 displacing 12 million and killing at least 40,000, the outcome could spur sanctions and isolate the RSF and its backers, a push to turn impunity into accountability. Berlin flips the switch on bill relief. Germany's Bundestag passed two measures to cut some of Europe's highest power costs, slashing network fees and trimming the electricity tax for industry and agriculture to the EU minimum, pending upper house approval. Coalition leaders also backed a direct subsidy, a fixed power price near 5 euro cents per kilowatt-hour for energy-intensive firms, planned for 3 years through 2028, subject to European Commission clearance, with an estimated price tag of 3 to 5 billion euros. The plan aims to recharge a manufacturing motor that has sputtered for 2 straight years, arrest offshoring shocks, and plug capital back into plants and ports. A tanker tail takes a sharp turn in the Strait of Hormuz. The Marshall Islands flagged Talara diverted toward Iranian waters, after 3 small boats intercepted it, according to private security firm Ambry. The UK Maritime Trade Operations Centre warned mariners, citing possible state activity off the UAE coast. Iran has not acknowledged the incident. The ship's manager says contact is lost. A U.S. Navy MQ-4C Triton drone circled for hours. Expect ripples in insurance rates and a fresh tide of diplomacy as stakeholders try to steady this vital shipping lane. In London, a legal landslide, a High Court judge found BHP liable for Brazil's 2015 Fundão Dam collapse, ruling the disaster foreseeable and the company negligent, lacking in skill. The decision deems BHP a polluter under Brazilian environmental law and liable under the Civil Code for a catastrophe that killed 19 and sent toxic mud coursing down the Doce River. The group action, representing over 600,000 people, advances toward a damages phase slated for October 2026, with claims up to £36 billion. BHP plans to appeal. It's a case mining new ground in corporate accountability. Ecuador heads to a Sunday referendum that could overturn its constitutional ban on foreign military bases, a pivot pitched as boosting the fight against drug trafficking through deeper international cooperation. Enshrined in 2008 under Rafael Correa, the ban's reversal is opposed by his allies as a sovereignty surrender that won't solve the crime wave. A yes vote could reopen the door to U.S. presence for the first time since 2009. Officials have toured potential sites in Manta and Salinas with President Daniel Noboa. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with GPT-5, Gemini Pro 2.5, Gemini Flash 2.5, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.